What would you invest in if you controlled over $12.5 trillion? Stable companies with long-term growth, promising startups shaping the future, or countries and corporations so desperate for cash they'll hand you control over an unreasonable amount of their assets just to survive. But this is not just a hypothetical question. For one man, it's a daily decision. His name is Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the company that quietly manages over $12.5 trillion. And while most investors chase safety and growth, Fink built his empire on something far more ruthless, turning other people's crises into profitable opportunities. But here's the thing, he wasn't born into this kind of power. Fink started like any other kid in Van Nuys, California. No rich parents, no financial upbringing, nothing about him hinted he'd control trillions one day. By 1976, he'd earned a BA in political science and an MBA in real estate. That same year, he landed his first job at a New York investment bank, First Boston. But here's where it gets interesting. Within a few years, Fink had increased the company's assets by $1 billion. He wasn't just good, he was a rising star. Colleagues whispered about his skill, rivals envied him, and the higher-ups just couldn't ignore him. Until 1986. That's when he mistakenly erased $100 million because of an incorrect analysis. The number flashed on his screen like a death sentence. His career, his reputation, everything he'd built wobbled on the edge. He had just experienced the worst nightmare of a trader. With no job, Fink had to find a way back again. For a moment, it felt like the end, but Fink didn't stop. He had nothing left but his wits. That's when he saw it. A gap in the markets. While others panic at the rise of complex fixed income securities and booming pension funds, Fink saw a gold mine waiting to be tapped. But there was a tiny bit of a problem. Fink was broke. So how do you start a company with no money? Connections. Using his reputation for risk analysis, Fink attracted several partners, most crucially, Peter Peterson of the Blackstone Group. Peterson believed in Fink's vision for a firm that would manage risk scientifically, not emotionally. But in 1988, Blackstone gave Fink's team a $5 million credit line for a 50% stake in the new venture, called Blackstone Financial Management. Within a year, the firm's assets quadrupled. But soon after, the company separated from Blackstone and became BlackRock. But during that time, Fink's obsession with risk evolved into something bigger, a system. BlackRock built Aladdin, a software that tracks trillions of dollars in assets across the world. Governments, banks, and even competitors depend on it to make decisions. Fink didn't just build a company, they built the operating system of global finance. But then came the 2008 crisis, the crisis that would completely change the level of influence Fink would have. In this period, BlackRock didn't just advise governments, it managed the assets the US government had to absorb. Bear Stearns had $30 billion in bad investments. Imagine a giant stack of houses and loans, all about to fall like dominoes. BlackRock's job was to figure out which ones could be saved and which could crash. AIG had $180 billion in risky insurance deals. If they failed, it could break banks all over the world. BlackRock acted like a bomb squad, deciding which deals to fix and which to contain. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had $112 billion in mortgages, loans for millions of American families' homes. BlackRock watched over all of it, making sure the system didn't collapse. Everyone looked to Fink. When the financial system broke, he was the one people called. And in saving the Wall Street, he quietly became the Wall Street. Yes, every move helped the system, but it also gave BlackRock more control over money and power than anyone else. Later in 2009, BlackRock bought another huge companies, Barclays Global Investors, including iShares ETFs. Now they were the largest asset manager in the entire world, controlling assets across nearly every corner of the financial system. But Fink's heroism had a hidden side. To the world, he looked like a messiah, but behind the scenes, he was taking control, stacking influence, and turning crises into opportunities to grow even richer and more powerful. But it makes you wonder, how many more crises has he turned into opportunity? Fast forward to 2023, Fink announced another heroic venture, Ukraine Rebuilding Fund, to raise $2.5 billion for rebuilding a broken nation. However, under this facade, there was something deeper that reveals Fink's true character. You see, Fink is not some philanthropist like Mr. Beast. He wouldn't just donate to some dying nation without any incentive, because it was all a carefully crafted investment strategy, designed to funnel billions of private dollars into Ukraine's reconstruction, in exchange for control of its assets, roads, factories, energy grids, anything that could be turned into profits. Many believed Fink just wanted to help millions of innocent Ukrainians, but for him, it was just another opportunity, because apparently, even war has return on investment. However, just 2 years later, the mask slipped. When the political winds shifted in 2025, when the US government support for Ukraine became uncertain, BlackRock quietly withdrew from the fund. The mission wasn't complete, the war wasn't over, but the returns were gone. That's when you realize, for Fink, rebuilding was never about Ukraine. It was about control disguised as compassion. But Fink didn't stop at rebuilding countries. He moved on to taking control over the routes the entire world relied on to trade.
My administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it.
In 2025, BlackRock and a few partners bought controlling stake in Houston ports, giving them sway over 43 ports worldwide, including key terminals at the Panama Canal. Think about that. The canal isn't just a shortcut, it's the artery of global trade. 14,000. That's the number of ships that passes through that canal annually, carrying fuel, electronics, and everyday goods. More shockingly, roughly 6 to 8% of global trade flows here. That's about $2 to $2.6 trillion of trade every year. But when shipping slows or costs rise, it hits your wallet first. Fuel, groceries, online orders, they all get inflated. However, most people won't notice until it's too late. One ship actually got stuck in the Suez Canal in 2021. It delayed hundreds of vessels and costed $9.6 billion a day. Now imagine someone who doesn't just block the route, but outright owns it. Governments are starting to push back. Panama is reviewing the deal. However, the US officials who once banned BlackRock are quietly backing them again because power always finds a way. Fink doesn't need armies, he just buys the route the world depends on. But what if the next thing he owns isn't a canal or a port, it's your investment portfolio? Fink is taking control through ETFs, simple-looking funds where money quietly joins millions of others. By 2023, BlackRock's iShares had a 34% share of the global ETF market. That means when people invest to save for their future, they're handing voting power to BlackRock, whether they realize it or not. Together, BlackRock, Vanguard, and the State Street control over 20% of votes in America's biggest companies. That's not investing, that's silent ownership, because they can decide who sits on boards, who gets paid, and which companies merge. But it's not just about corporate maneuvering. These decisions ripple through your life. Crises, layoffs, dividends, they are all quietly shaped by a handful of firms. But when one of these giants make a move, the effect hit entire industries. But they don't need to lobby openly. They already hold the levers behind the scene. A misstep here isn't just one company failing. It can ripple through your job, your savings, and the products you rely on. You think you're buying freedom with your money, but your savings are what gives Fink control. But Larry Fink loves talking about saving the planet. He calls it ESG, environmental, social, and government investing. He writes letters to CEOs, telling them to be responsible, to go green, to care about the planet. It sounds noble, but behind the speeches, the numbers tell a different story. BlackRock still invests billions in oil, coal, and weapon companies. In fact, it's one of the largest shareholders in the world's biggest polluters, Shell, ExxonMobil, and Chevron. So when Fink says we're leading the green transition, what it really means is we profit from both the sides. Some states, like Texas and Florida, even banned BlackRock for pretending to care about climate while funding fossil fuels. And that's the pattern with Fink. He sells morality when it's profitable, but stays silent when it's not. But how much of your life is already being influenced without you noticing? Every time the world breaks, he's ready to rebuild, but not for you. Not for the people who lost everything, but for the system he's been designing all along. So the real question is, if someone can quietly shape so much of the world, what part of your life will they shape next?